All right, we're officially live. Mastermind, Wise Talk Mastermind, excited to be back. And so the overall consensus was that we better off just going live and taking questions and whatnot from everybody. Uh-oh, got too many windows open.
Yep.
Give me 1 second. Let me figure out where all these windows at. All right, bet. All right, I'll end that. All right, we good. Okay.
All right.
Still working out all the kinks. So Mr. George and Mr. Allen will be back with us shortly, but we're going to get started and go from there. So, Mr. Bitcoin Ben, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing awesome, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing good as well, man. Excited to connect with everybody, and so everybody got a subject matter they want to touch on, and so we're going to just scroll through it. And let me acknowledge a couple people for taking time to join us in the chat. And so definitely one of the big things of having this software opportunity is I like the opportunity that you've used in getting additional support. And so giving people opportunity to stand out from everybody else outside the chat. And so same thing will apply here. Thanks to Mr. Bitcoin Ben, giving that idea that if anybody wants to have their thoughts and immediately addressed or touched on, don't be afraid to donate a super chat and you'll get immediate attention, and definitely it supports the channel. Because I'm not sure about you, Ben, but YouTube hasn't been too friendly towards the monetization of my videos. So I got to figure out other ways of getting it going.
I don't believe it. You've lost money from YouTube?
Yeah, or I'm not getting the full shebang of what I think my hard work is not being rewarded for. So how you doing, Alan?
I'm back.
We and I'm actually going to help you change that. Because I know of a lot of platforms that, or not platforms, browsers. Mm-hmm. There's one browser, the Brave browser.
Yeah.
Do you use it?
So I use it all the time, but I did not activate the monetization just because of the fact that I got to give up all my life. I got to give up too much information again. And that's one of the benefits of it is that once you give up the little information, you're good and you can be rewarded. But it's just, and this goes into the crypto side of things. In order to get involved in that, we got to give up information. And if it was possible to get involved, giving up, I would do it. But that's why I've probably been missing out on some funds because I'm tired of giving up my information to all these financial institutions that basically they're tracking and monitoring what I receive. So I'm like,
you're already tracked, man.
I'm already tracked, but I'm trying to minimize more. I'm trying to minimize more exposure to being tracked.
Minimize if you've got a social security number and you're breathing, you're tracked.
Yeah,
you're already in the system. I mean, you're literally it's like you're on the Titanic and it's already resting on the lower level of the ocean.
Yeah.
And you're trying to scoop out water.
Yeah. Try not to drown.
Right.
In this transition. So we got Mr. George Gammon. How you doing, sir?
Hi, guys. Sorry I'm late.
You're all fine and good. Your volume, I think, is a little bit low.
Oh, is it?
or you're talking sideways. I don't hear you into the microphone.
Let me see if I can adjust.
There you go.
You're good now.
Yep.
You're probably away from the microphone. Okay. So while we're here, 3 minutes into it, Mr. George Gammon, I gave everybody a chance to kind of bring a subject that they wanted to talk about to the subject matter. And so we got Alex Miles. I appreciate that contribution there, my friend. And I appreciate that. So, Mr. Gammon, at any point you got a conversation topic, feel free to dive into it. And so I want to start off with Mr. Bitcoin Ben's primary topic, because it's in regards to his video I did yesterday. And so I was wanting to hear feedback and see what people think. And I'm always open to having discussions that I think can challenge both sides, the pro and the cons, and the enthusiasts and the haters, because I think, having conversation can build a bridge and build a gap to better information. So,
yep. And I see there's a super chat. Put that bad boy up on the screen.
Yeah, you're talking about from Mr. Alex Miles?
Yeah, Alex Miles. Hey, man. We appreciate your super chat and your participation. We basically we have conversations with each other on topics, and we appreciate any help you guys can help us with, because I think we're all actually married, except maybe who isn't married here?
I think Mr. George.
All right, so he's the only one who has money. So the rest of us, you need to help out a little bit. Send a little $2 super chat. All right.
All right. So I'll set the stage real quick. So
Yep.
for those that didn't have a chance to see, yesterday I did a video where I just wanted to challenge the mainstream narrative. And so after watching the Senate and Finance hearing on Tuesday, Jerome Powell said something that I believe was very important. He said that the Federal Reserve has been studying digital currencies for several decades or a few decades. So I'm thinking, like, we say a few, that's more than 10. Is that 20 or is it 30 or is it 40? And then I showed a visual aid showing how we've already been in an electronic money system, and that they're just waiting on whatever it is to usher in the solely digital economy. And I believe cryptocurrency plays into that. And they have to allow Bitcoin to succeed. If not, it's going to be hard to convince the people to accept their digital currency. So it goes hand in hand. So take it away, Mr. Bitcoin Ben.
Yeah, it's they have and this is how you have to look at it. Is everyone is always evolving towards efficiency, no matter who you are. If you're a company, if you're an individual, if you're a corporation, if you're a government, you're always looking for efficiency in transaction or efficiency in communication, leaner and meaner, that whole idea. And with the availability, this has actually been going on since the invention of the old telegram. Because as soon as you could communicate language over a line, then you could actually transact value over that line. And so this is just the next evolution in that process, is the transaction of value using the most efficient way that we know technology-wise, which is cryptocurrency, and the blockchain or decentralized ledger technology, which decentralized ledger technology is really just a really fancy word for a lot of wallets. That's what that is. And so it's creating a provable on the honest blockchains, the decentralized blockchains. It's creating an incorruptible ledger of transactions, where when you have a centralized blockchain, they can roll the blockchain back and they can alter transactions, or they can refuse a transaction, or like, let this one go first, let that one go second. And my idea with my show and my whole reason for existing in this cryptocurrency environment is to get as many little guys, truck drivers, if you're flipping burgers, if you're, what the average Joe involved in a transition that's already going to happen. Even if there was no government, this transition would happen because humans always move towards efficiency. And humans also are attracted towards decentralization. It's why so many people loved America when it was initially, created, was because the power was actually decentralized so well. And now we're living in a global world, and we're living through the 1776 equivalent of the decentralization of the globe, of the economy, of information, everything is getting decentralized.
Yeah, good point. And so if anybody else have any thoughts, feel free to do so. And so one of my concerns is that it's not by coincidence that we're here. And as you mentioned, mankind always evolved to what's easiest and most efficient, no doubt. Only problem is going solely digital was a part of the plan a long time ago. And so just when I visually I show, we went from metals to paper, metal, redemption of paper to digits. Now we're already in digits now. And going further digital into a digital, solely digital monetary system, to me, is a direct setup for what they want to roll out. Now, the decentralized all sounds good. How else can you sell it unless you throw some bells and whistles and sprinkle it with the idea that it's more decentralized, less government control, and all those bells and whistles? But yet, once we've all accepted going digital, at that point, it's good to say that governments and corporations will do what they've always done, which is they'll move right in for profit and self-interest, and they will probably find some way, regulation-wise, to make it very challenging for those that operate in the decentralized world to function. Because as always, government, this is a transition period, and depending on what comes out of this, I think government will grow, and then they will come down hard on anything labeled decentralized, which is a threat to them, that will prove as a competitive currency to their central currencies. That's what I'm saying. Like, it sounds good in the transition. You can probably make some funds, but when the dust settles, you better believe the government's going to be bigger, stronger, and more authoritarian than ever, which makes it very hard for people to spend those currencies, I think.
That is left up to the people.
Now watch. Okay. So, okay. Go ahead.
All right. Well, my turn. Thank you, Ben, for all of that. And I would say, again, not to be argumentative, but these are important points.
No, bring it. It's all out of love.
All right. I'm going to bring the love. If humans always moved to more efficiency, which I don't think we do, we might strive for it. Some people might, but ultimately we don't move to more efficiency. Because we have allowed, and to Ben's point, ultimately, this is on us, we the people. We have allowed our central government, our federal government, to get more and more powerful, to become more and more unconstitutional. And has our country become more efficient? No.
Yes.
Yes, what? We have become more efficient?
Yeah.
I don't.
In a ton of ways. I mean, you're grouping us all in as like one actual hive mind, which you have to actually break up. All right, is rail more efficient than walking? Is a car more efficient than rail? Is a truck more efficient than a car? You're generalizing on all of this idea, and what I'm saying is that we're all decentralized already. We just can see more of the world than we've ever been able to see before. So it looks centralized.
Now, what I'm saying is I'm talking specifically about the federal government. I understand that whether I have feet, horse, cart, truck, I have the ability at this point to commute or travel. I got that. I'm talking about the federal government and how much power it has taken from us. Our federal government apparently has been at war with poverty since the 60s. How's it doing on that? It's not doing well at all. It's been at war on drugs since the 60s. How's it doing? It's not doing good. This is the problem with massive centralization. Our founders, those that came from the 13 states, maybe I think Rhode Island didn't show up. Anyway, they wanted most of the power with the states and the people, and the federal government was only going to have so much power, the enumerated powers. They knew to limit the federal government and to keep the power and the processes closer to home in the states. So as our federal government, and that's the point I was making, I'm not talking about individuals, as our federal government has become more and more powerful, has taken more and more power from us, it's become more inefficient.
All right, watch this, Alan. Before you go down the road, let's stay on this topic here, and then we'll get to that. Because when the crypto sector and the transition to the digital economy, does it bother or concern you as a parent that your children might only know transacting via their phone or chip or thumb or brain scan? Does that bother you at all? Because that's a part of the transition.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk to young people, and I'm not knocking them because it wasn't in their education system. Some people older, they don't even know how to fill out a check. They don't know how to do it. They haven't done it. They have checking accounts, but it's all electronic. My pushback on when you only have one choice, as in fully electronic, you have no options. And if you're fully electronic, you are dependent, and I don't like dependency. You're dependent on computers, computer access, internet, electricity. I don't like that. But the last thing on this deal regarding, and I like the topic about being efficient or non-efficient, central or non-centralized, is that what did we get in 1913? Possibly the worst legislative year in our Congress. We got the 16th and 17th Amendment, and we got the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Federal Reserve Act of 1913 has really, really ultimately hurt this country far beyond what's normally talked about. This is massive centralization of money creation power within the hands of banks. So do I like that? No. If we're going to centralize power, let's centralize the power that's in the control of the people in a specific way, not and you know, I have my way, Ben has his, but the thing is that the bigger the entity is, as in federal government, the more specific we have to be about what power it gets to have and how it gets to wield it. And the only reason that we're in the state we're in right now is because we got educated, indoctrinated to not be involved.
Yeah. Mr. George Gammon, want to chime in? Any thoughts in particular in regards to cryptocurrency and the transition it's going to have on our future generations? Pros and cons.
Yeah, I was writing down some notes here. First of all, I think it's very important that we point out that the government is the opposite of efficiency. Any efficiency that you can attribute to the private sector, the only thing the government does is get in the way of that efficiency. And what I mean by that is, like Ben was saying, if left to our own devices, the individuals themselves would strive for a means of transacting with one another that was as efficient as possible. And I completely believe that. But the government is there to get in the way. And if we didn't have the government, if we had a much smaller government, let me say it that way, a very limited government, the way it was set up originally, the standard of living in the United States would be, I mean, believe it or not, would be exponentially higher than it already is. And I think the world over. And so the problem with the federal government having all the power is, in order to maintain that power, they have to monopolize the money. If they don't have a monopoly on money, the government they don't have any power. And so that's where I, from a philosophical standpoint, there was nothing I would like more than to have money itself decentralized in the form of cryptocurrency or seashells or gold or whatever the free market chooses, whatever individuals choose to interact with among themselves. But from a realistic standpoint, I don't see that happening from, well, there's not a 0% probability of it, but I don't see a good chance of that happening, because that takes away the government's power to be inefficient and to try to monopolize as much control as they possibly can have. I think that, if we're trying to wave the magic wand and have the best system possible, if you had a limited government, what we had, maybe call it the 1700s, 1800s, and a strict money supply, I don't care how you peg that money supply, you can peg it to Bitcoin, but something that takes away the printing press from the government or the Federal Reserve, that would be the optimal.
Now watch, George, sorry to cut you off. The printing press will be done away with in 5 years, because we're going to be in we'll be in a solely digital world. So here's my only concern is I don't see them cranking up the physical paper units the way prior hyperinflation has gone, because it wouldn't work for the reserve currency. But I was talking to Mr. James Anderson the other day, and he mentioned that as a part of this new shakeup, he can see the introduction of digital coin, of the Fed coin, Treasury coin, or whatever, on top of all the chaotic stuff, and that right there being something that is used to avoid hyperinflation as far as paper is concerned. Because once again, we can't stand to see streets loaded with these things like that. I don't think that'll ever happen, but I think they will transition us into digital units, and everybody has a cell phone, everyone has a social security number. So what's the chance of them connecting your social security number and some Federal Reserve app? Log into the Federal Reserve app, and you'll have direct, $800 universal basic income per month. Or
I think it isn't going to be the Federal Reserve. I think it's actually Trump is going to bring the Federal Reserve into the Treasury. He is going to get rid of effectively the Federal Reserve System and replace it with a digital coin or representation of a new currency out of the Treasury. That is going to happen by the end of his second term. Now, as for we have to quit thinking that the government is right behind us, getting ready to club us as soon as we do something they don't publicly deem as right. It's the illusion of authority. It's I can go right now and go get a thing of marijuana, smoke it up, and it's illegal as hell. There is not somebody, there's not an entity, there's not a company, I don't give a rat's ass what anybody says, it's the only reason people are scared of the government is because somebody told them to be scared of the government.
Ben, right? Try not paying $5 in taxes.
Oh, hey,
they're going to put you behind bars and throwing an orange suit. I've been audited 5 times.
Yes.
So I think the fear of the government, I think it's
the only reason we fear them is because we don't realize we got more guns than they do.
But what happens to respecting?
I don't know if we do.
Law officials, so are we at the point now where we should pick and choose based upon how?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you should always live your life like that. You'd never let any government entity or any other person ever tell you what to do. And if that brings you into a fight, maybe it's a fight you need to have. See, the problem with America is we got a lot of pussies. Excuse my language. All right. It is people who hear the word government who flinch that are the problem. When the government hears the people, they should flinch. And I'm sick and tired of so many Americans who are like, oh man, yeah, you could get audited, you could do it. Yeah, it was a big fucking deal. Get audited, bring the fight. If the government Look what happened in Alabama or wherever that was, where they were going to write a Second Amendment law and all that stuff. Did you see all those people show up with guns? We need about 50 more of those groups all over America, and then we'll see how powerful the government is. The government's not powerful because the government is mostly the military. The military's us. They're our sons, our daughters. You think that those people are going to take an order that goes, hey, go over there and round up them people that are protesting for their freedom? This is all a freaking mirage.
Now watch this.
I 100% think they would.
Outside of that, and because of having boots, like the idea of having militarized boots of our own U.S. citizens on the U.S. ground rounding people up is not likely. But the UN can.
Oh, bring your blue hats.
And the UN are already in the U.S. on the East Coast right now. And I saw some documentation from one of my shows earlier about how this coronavirus is one of those global humanitarian events that will give the UN an opportunity to position themselves here. And because they're already here, why not go ahead and just, as things are falling apart, the UN are already here, and they are, according to whatever world body group that gave them authority, they're able to militarize and protest because they're not U.S. foreigners.
Won't happen. There's too many of us backwood country fucks that'll come out and literally, hey, I'm 45 years old. I've had some good living. You think I'm going to let some blue hat mother plucker come over to my country and tell me that because someone over in China's friggin' dying that I got to give up my guns or anything like that? No, we need to quit being a bunch of asking for permission. That's not how we live. Don't ask for permission and then beg for forgiveness. What you do is you do what you want to do. Then when somebody shows up and goes, hey, you can't do that, you tell them to fuck off.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with the concept, but I don't think that we should overlook human psychology. And what I mean by that,
pussy?
No, I mean that's one component of it, but I mean Nazi Germany. And so what I mean by that and bring up that topic is you have to look at all these guards that, let's say, ran all of the concentration camps and herded up all these people, and look at the group of Germans that were there at that time and that voted for Hitler and were behind this. Were they all evil?
No.
You see, were they all demons?
They had a mission.
Well, but
and what was their mission? Save Germany.
But I think that, well, what's our mission? Save America.
Exactly.
I think people are people, and if put into the right circumstance, I don't think that we as Americans would be any different, or would have been any different than the Germans in Germany. I don't think they're lesser. I don't think they're morally corrupt as a people. I think it's just a circumstance, and people have the tendency to, from a psychological standpoint, that you can switch them on a dime. You can have the most morally upright person that you've ever met in your life, and if put under the right conditions and brainwashed by a government, can be committing acts of murder within a year or two.
Well,
it's unfortunately, it's a flaw in the human design. And when you go back to saying that, well, I don't think our military, they're our sons and daughters, there's no way that they would come in and lock people up. I completely disagree with that. And look at what we did to the Japanese that were here in the United States in World War II. Didn't we lock them up? I mean, I think we need, and I completely agree philosophically again with Ben, and Ben and I have had conversations about this in the past, how we grew up and it was a different era, and that we need to, especially young people today, really they're emotionally they're coddled their entire lives. Yeah, exactly. And we need to get out of that. They need to get out of that bubble, so to speak, and they need to toughen up. But I do think that it's important that we realize how flawed we are from a psychological standpoint as human beings, not just Germans, but Americans as well.
Your idea of flawed is that somebody might get violent.
No, we're very susceptible to being brainwashed to doing things that morally there's no way we would have done 2 years prior.
Right. See, I have no problem with violence at all. And I'll tell you why. Because if I'm walking down the road and it's me and my wife, and there's a group of guys that want to abuse my wife in a certain manner, I'm going to get violent, and I'm going to smile the whole time I'm getting violent. And see, we have this idea that getting violent is a bad thing. It isn't. It's like a gun. If you have justifiable violence, that's good. If you have injustifiable violence, that's bad. Now, as for the whole idea of like Germany and the Nazis and all that, I could go on a rant of how stupid most of the global people are on what World War II really was. Right? The German military were doing the right thing for Germany at the time. Now, yes, people did die, but I guarantee if we ever in America really got serious about taking our freedom back, there would be several political groups that we would get violent against. We'd have to. Now, whether or not you like that or not, it is irrelevant. If we ever want this utopia that everyone preaches they want, you're going to have to eliminate and kick out the group that wants to control you, right? If someone's in your house trying to break in your house, you're not going to sit and argue with him and hope that he leaves. No. This is going to end one of two ways. Either we get them out of the country, or we handle them inside the country with either imprisonment or some other form of getting rid of them. I vote for imprisonment, all right? But in World War II, if you know your history, Hitler did not want to kill Jews. What he did was he wanted them out of his country because most of them were there illegally. That's why if you look at the locations, and history always repeats itself, if you look at the locations of the concentration camps, they were all along the border of Germany. But sound familiar? You know, people were trying to get into Germany and they were detaining them at the border. Now, shit got bad whenever the Allies actually cut off the food and all that being shipped into Germany, where Hitler had a choice. Either the concentration people, they die of starvation, or my troops do. And this whole, we have this illusion that we're going to have and solve this big issue, and it's all going to be kumbaya, and all of a sudden the left are not going to be a bunch of fascists, and they're all of a sudden going to let us have our freedoms back. Well, that's not how the world works. People will steal from you until you punch them in their face.
All right, yeah. I want this. Okay, go ahead, George. Answer that, and then we're gonna keep moving.
First of all, I want to make sure that I'm very clear that I'm not an apologist for Nazi Germany. I'm just saying that we need to be, as human beings, we need to understand how susceptible we are to that type of moral evil corrupting our own system and our own culture. And when I'm talking about that, I'm not talking about going out and inflicting harm upon another group of people. I'm talking about just the being susceptible to the government bringing on a digital currency as an example that will take away the freedoms and the personal liberties of just your average American. So I want to be very clear on that.
Only if you choose to.
Yeah, but really, I think it goes back to the fact that the reason the government has so much control is because the people have chosen over time to give it control. And I think that unfortunately, now the only thing that can get us back to a point where we have a lot more personal liberties is a reset of the system. I don't see from a probability standpoint how it could happen otherwise. And I think what's interesting too is I've traveled around the country or around the world. The countries where you have the most freedom, oddly enough, are often the countries that are the poorest. Mm-hmm. And people think, oh, no, that's crazy. If you go to a place like XYZ, they have all these rules and restrictions. Well, that may be true, but they can't enforce them because they just don't have the resources to enforce them. So they may have all these rules on the books, but no one follows them. You can have a lot more freedom. So my point is that in order for the United States government to have a lot fewer resources so that they had less of an opportunity to bully not only the world, but their own citizens, I think you'd have to have unfortunately, you'd have to have a crash and a collapse of the system. Maybe it's hyperinflation. I'm not sure how that plays out, but that's the only realistic way that you could get from A to B, is maybe some sort of black swan event that would create that. I'm not hoping for that. I wish there was an alternative, and I'd be more than happy. And I've got an open mind to views on how we could get from A to B differently. But I don't know. That's how I see it.
Now,
I'm gonna weigh in. Michael, can I weigh in?
Go ahead.
I've been listening. I have a much different reading of the history of World War II, and specifically Germany. The concentration camps were not on the border. One of the most infamous concentration camps was Auschwitz. That was in Poland. If you want to check the history, check out what the final solution was. They brought Jews in from Italy, across Switzerland. The Jews were there legally. They were not illegal immigrants. They had businesses. They had wealth. These were not illegals. And Hitler took his attitude across Europe. He didn't just leave it in Germany. You check out what they called the Western Wall. We call the Siegfried Line. That was built in the mid to late 30s, 100 miles long of pillboxes and tank traps. Why do you build that if you're not preparing for war? And one of my late clients, God rest his soul, he and a group that he led, they actually breached the Siegfried Line. And I learned that, after a few months of it, you get really good at taking out pillboxes. The leadership of Germany had one goal, and it wasn't to make Germany better. Because if it was, they wouldn't have started they wouldn't have keep going into country after country in Europe. You want to show the difference between what U.S. did in World War II to the Japanese that were on the West Coast. They took them. They didn't get their property. They shipped them off to some place, but they didn't kill them. Was it proper according to U.S. law? Absolutely not. They didn't do the same thing to the Germans on the East Coast. But for some reason, they were worried that Japan was going to attack us, along the West Coast, which was never going to happen because that wasn't Japan's intent. Japan wanted to control the Pacific Rim up to Hawaii. They weren't going to come to us. the point is, I mean, we got way off the track from where we
Yeah.
started.
We're gonna reel it back in.
So to wrap this up, and to George's, I got to find my note. That is,
he got notes. Yeah,
I got notes, baby.
Yeah, please
we need
understand that I'm not saying Hitler was a good guy.
let me finish them. This is, to me, we really need to understand the problem or problems and really lay it out to come up with a good solution. I've done that with the monetary system. Our governmental system, our founders, God bless them, lit the light of liberty. We have not taken care of it. We have allowed our federal government to go extremely unconstitutional. We've allowed banks, not the Fed, not the U.S. Treasury, not the U.S. government. Commercial banks are the sole creators of money in our system, period. That's by their own definition. Reserves and money, they're not the same thing. But we have allowed this to happen on our watch because we are not politically, whether it's local, regional, state, national, we are not involved enough. We are not telling, and my term for the people is elected employees, because that's what they are. We're the citizen owners. They're the elected employees. We're not in telling our employees what to do. We check out and we think they're going to do the right thing. Well,
watch this.
All you have to do, last thing, all you have to do is look at history for just a little bit and realize their version of the right thing is to take more power from us, more rights. And if you want to see how bad it's going to get, and maybe we'll get to it next time, anybody out there listening, check out House Resolution 5383. It's called the New Way Forward Act. It's about reforming the immigration system. Read it. It's not short, but it's really worth your time because it is very scary to what the 44 Democrats who co-sponsored this bill want to do to our immigration system. Talk about opening the door to it. You just got to read it, and maybe we can get to it next time.
All right. So watch this. Okay. So we realize that there is currently underway right now a transformation into a digital age. And in my personal opinion, this generation right here is the last resistance, because our children, my children, and the unborn, they will have no clue about this historical transformation. They're going to be born into a solely digital economy and digital everything. They will never know anything tangible. They will not know what it means to go to the library and research. They will not know anything apart from what we as parents or whatever give them now, because it's going to be removed from our history books. So right now, there will be no change. And I'm not optimistic in saying that we're going to abolish the Fed. I don't think Trump is anything more than a puppet. Like, he is going to do exactly what he was in there to do, which is going to be more of the same, because I don't see no great resistance happening, gentlemen. I'm sorry. Like, I don't see that. There will be a reset. There will be a lot of lives lost, but I think it's going to be a part of their plan, not ours. Because as you mentioned earlier, Ben, about us being a bunch of pussies, if we're willing to watch, if we're willing to sit by and watch what's going on now without doing much about it, then we can't pass it on to our children, because they're going to give in automatically, because all they know is submission. So if we fight now, I'm getting all rebellious. Either we take something,
let's get it out.
If we do something now where it won't be done, and we're going to be a part of this transformation, and we will accept whatever they give to us, because ultimately everybody's more so concerned with their own comfortableness and their lifestyle than actually bringing about change. So the Fed can roll out whatever. We're not going to do nothing about it, basically.
Right. And I completely agree with Alan. What he said was dead on. And what we've done is let them progressively nudge us over 120 years or even longer into giving up our rights. And what that has been is the government and the progressives socially and using laws to nudge us just enough where we won't rebel and actually get serious and address it, then they'll back down a little bit, but then they'll come right back. And that originates in the late 1800s with a group called the Fabian Socialist. And that group, you want to know what's wrong with America? The Fabian Socialist hopped on a boat and came over here, and it's been downhill since. Now, the only way to get this back, and I hate to say this, unless we do it the reverse progressive way, if we progress towards freedom and not away from it. If you want a hard crash and a hard reset, then we do have to have another 1776.
Yeah. What I'd like to say is that if you want to know the first, quite possibly the first Fabian Socialist progressive president,
Woodrow Wilson.
Thank you.
Yep.
Woodrow Wilson. He was a progressive. I mean, people might think that being a progressive is a recently new term. It was back in 1913. Socialist, progressive, communist. It's all about taking freedom, liberty, rights, and responsibilities away from people. That's not what this country was about. And for me, I would rather prevent Armageddon than survive it. And the way to do that is this comes down to, we have to begin, in essence, a new educational system, one that is based on facts, not theories, not rewritten, not make it warm and fuzzy. And each one of us individually and together, this is what we need to do. We need to get the education out about the way the country was set up, what has happened, how we keep losing things, our rights. And rights has just become a word that is being so misused. You hear all the time, well, those are my rights. Those are my rights. Well, my rights were given to me by the Creator. They don't require anybody to make a payment on my behalf. And they don't negatively impact anybody else's. Okay, you want free education? That's not a right. That's a benefit, because someone's got to pay for it. Mm-hmm. You want to be able to tell me I can't say something because it offends you or hurts your feelings? Well, you don't have. That's not a right. We don't have a right to not be offended. It will be very helpful if we wind up sitting back and actually having serious conversations with each other. Keep the finger pointing, the name calling, the yelling, the screaming down. See where we can find common ground, and then reflect back on our rights and what do we get to do and what don't we get to do. And some of this, you're just going to have to suck it up. You don't get everything you want because you feel entitled. And this is what's coming out in all these, I'll call them splinter groups. Everybody's got rights. The problem is they don't think about, yeah, but you're stepping on my First and Second Amendment. Yeah, well, don't do that. Okay, you don't touch those.
Yeah, it's weird. You cannot have a conversation with a progressive or a liberal today, because how do you argue with someone who wants to take away your freedom? At what percentage do you let them win? Are you only 80% slave? Are you only 40% slave? You know, what level of slavery are you willing to live with so they're happy enough with the control they have over you?
Well, everybody's happy with, we're going to allow this is going to happen. This is going to happen. right up until you have to live with the situation. For me, most of the people I know are not, let's say, politically aligned with me. So I spend a lot of time listening. I want to know what they're thinking, what they're seeing, what they're not thinking, what they're not seeing, and just get a sense of what I think they're missing. I try to no, they got a brain. They just
I think what they're missing is thinking, though. I think they feel more than they think. It's not that they don't have a brain, they're not intelligent, but they let the feelings rule the day. They let their emotions control their thought process. In my opinion.
Absolutely. I've watched these people screaming and yelling. As soon as you go to screaming and yelling, the conversation is over,
right? And
you're in full emotional lock.
Right.
But they will sit there and tell you to your face, screaming, how important, as you just said, George, how important feelings and emotions are. As if, okay, I got the idea that you have this feeling. Do you have any facts?
This is something we have to get, and I want to talk about this next show. Mm-hmm. Is there a such thing as feelings? There's not. All right. Yeah. Let me tell you what a feeling is. Is somebody did something that doesn't jive with what I want done. So you either get mad or you say that they've offended you. When somebody tells me that I offended them, I say, prove it, and watch their brain freeze.
No, a lot of that happens to do with just their paradigm. Like everybody operates according to their own formal structure, way of
what
thought.
They want.
Right. And anything that contradicts that, anything that challenges that, creates an uncomfortable experience, which then leads to an emotion of nervousness or anxiety or whatever, which creates something that they call a feeling. And it's one of them things where, because I am now uncomfortable because you're challenging me, I feel like this is, like you're attacking me, or I feel like you're disrespecting me, or I feel like, it's a challenge.
It is a conscious thought.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It is not a random, like whenever somebody tells you that they got offended, like I said, ask them to prove it. Mm-hmm. Because that if you break your leg, it's broken. Mm-hmm. If you get offended, that's a choice that you've made to be what they've labeled offended. The word offended is really just, you've said something that I didn't want you to say.
Or you challenging their belief. It's all about their belief.
That's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of their feelings, and maybe more importantly, how do you deal with a dumbass like that? How do you go?
It's a fool. They're called a fool. In the Bible, they're called fools. You don't argue.
What if those fools? What if there's more of those fools than you?
Oh, there's a lot of fools, because this entire system is ran by fools, in the sense of there being an agenda. And a lot of everything we're talking about here, I'm not sure where you guys stand, but it all has a spiritual connotation to it. And the very foundation of it is all evil in nature. And that's why I'm not optimistic of saying that individuals themselves can directly cause change, because you're fighting something that's embedded into this very nature of existence. Like, all the higher powers that be in every realm that controls every system, our money, our government, everything, those people worship the Satan. We all talk about the cults and the bloodshed.
Are we preaching?
No. I'm just saying.
Let's get it on.
The true war is a spiritual war in nature. So there's nothing that we can do within our own abilities. This is my beliefs. And so we're fighting a entity that already runs and controls this world. So we can strategize, come up with whatever man-made solutions, but that won't cut it. So we're going to get more of the same from, so that's why I'm not thinking that I can go out here and change the world. I can only educate a few to wake up, to take some different actions, and hopefully, pray for the best. But we're fighting against principalities and powers and places that go well beyond our comprehension, to be truthful. So
we are
talking about sounds good.
We are fighting against the enemies of free will.
The enemies of humanity, generally.
Of free will.
Think they want to be God. They want to be gods. They can't be a god, but they will do everything they can to be a god. Therefore,
I am bringing out a quote from the Bible. They will try to hide under mountains when this comes.
Well, I want to pop in here. I'd like to give you two definitions of the word offend.
Okay, give it up.
Okay, there's the legal one: commit an illegal act. You've offended. You okay?
Yeah.
That's
an action.
Of course, just using the word illegal is debatable nowadays. The other one is, and this is interesting, cause to feel upset, annoyed, or resentful. And I get the feel annoyed, and resentful. I get that. However, think about this. Cause. I say something and you're offended. Somehow my verbalization of an idea or words or thoughts has caused the offense, which means the person who's offended has taken no responsibility for being offended.
Right.
This is like I've come after you with a stick. And okay, the thing is, I may say, I always do. I'll say something that pisses somebody off, offends them, they don't like, yada, yada, yada. Okay, guess what? There is no constitutional right to not be offended.
Right. Let me ask you this.
Last thing.
Right.
And then, okay, somebody who's not politically in sync with me says stuff. And I sit there quietly and I listen, and I'm actually studying, I'm learning. I don't bark back, I'm offended.
Right. In a court of law, imagine that you three are up on...
Are you the judge?
No. And I ask you, prove that you were offended. Other than saying, because I said so, how do you prove that you have all of a sudden become offended? Do you have an offended bone? Can you take an x-ray and show that your offended bone was broken? No, because, and look at that definition. That's why that definition is not the legal definition, because to feel or to, that's an opinion that can be lied about. Anything that you cannot physically prove is an opinion. All right. So being offended is an opinion that the person who is offended tells you. They're telling you it's their opinion that you've offended them. They have no physical way to prove that you offended them.
What if they start crying?
That doesn't matter. That's
the thing is, to your point, or possibly to your point, it is the response to being offended is a feeling, which is non-physical. And the person who is allegedly offended has a feeling. They don't like the feeling.
Prove that feeling.
Right. You cannot. It is a it's a non-physical. But the thing is that physical or not, before we even get there, why am I responsible? Now, if I hit you in the knee, and I don't break your knee, but I whack it, and there may or may not be a bruise, but it hurt. Okay, I'm responsible for that.
Yep.
If I hit you in your feeling center because not physically, but verbally, I said something you don't like, well, chances are you're going to say something that I don't like. Mm-hmm. But I'm not pulling the same trigger and going, you've offended me and you've hurt my feelings. It's counterproductive.
Yeah.
That's because you're not a pussy.
Right. But you also, at the end of the day, at that definition of the show, it talks about just discomfort. All you've done is put somebody in a position where they are not comfortable because they don't see it the way you see it. Therefore, they made a choice to lash out at you from their ignorance or their combativeness, to where they're like, they feel challenged. Now I'm going to challenge you back. Problem is, an irrational person comes with emotion, whereas in someone who's cool and collective, like, okay, still, then I operate from logic. So show me some numbers or show me some facts, and then we can have a better discussion. You even try to show somebody some numbers or some facts or something like that, they'll still be like, no, who wrote that book? Like, where'd that come from? I don't believe it still. So you can't argue. Now, I don't even try.
If you really want to light a match and have this chat room lose its freaking mind, doesn't this oddly sound like an argument between a man and a woman?
When women come with the emotional side, men, want to actually speak some logic and show me some numbers, and have a better conversation. So
not all the women I know, I can tell you
that. Mine is 50-50. But anyway, so let's get ready to dial back. Mr. George, you got anything you want to
leave George,
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. First and foremost, I think, and there's kind of like a daisy chain of events, and I think it might, and I'm not saying that it did, but I think that if you go back to when the welfare state actually started and what that domino effect led to, and I don't have the time to go through everything here, but what it did, whether we like it or not, is it had an effect on the nuclear family. And if the nuclear family is destroyed, and I'm going to talk specifically to guys, if you take the guy out of the equation, and if you've got a young person that's raised by either or, if you got a young person that's raised by all guy, let's say they have a single father, and then they have all their teachers in school are all male, that's not optimal. That is suboptimal. And it's the same thing. If you have a single mom, and I've got, they're out there making it happen, you got to respect that. But the bottom line is, if they have all, if they're raised by a single mom, and then all their teachers in school are all female, and they don't have an influence from a positive male role model, that I would guess that would have the tendency to create generations that are far more fragile, which is exactly what we're talking about, and that are more centralized on how they feel and being offended, and that this is some sort of attack against them. Now they're trying to conflate the two, that there is no difference between a physical attack and an emotional attack, and they should be treated the same way under the law. And I would take it a step further. And, a lot of people think that we have freedom of speech in the United States, in the United States. And I would argue that we don't, not at all. Okay. And now on the books, we may have freedom of speech, but try to exercise that freedom of speech. If you're a college professor, try to exercise that freedom of speech on Twitter, or try and then see what happens. Yes. So would you rather have freedom of speech, but every time you say something wrong, it destroys your life? Or would you rather have restrictions to speech to where you can go ahead and say most of anything? Right? There's this very weird situation. And then taking it to the next step in my notes here is that I always talk about how if we limited the supply of money, that we would have, it would solve almost every problem. And so if we think about having a reset, a financial or a currency reset within the United States, where confidence is completely lost with the dollar, and we have no choice, the government doesn't have a choice but to go back to a system of currency that is limited, whether it's limited through a Bitcoin, whether it's limited through a commodity, but you just can't create more of it. They don't have a choice because the market, the population, just refuses to use anything else. Then you have then take that back to the welfare state, Okay. Well, then how do you have a large welfare state if you don't have the ability to print money? You'd have to tax people directly. And then it's more a decision of the population as opposed to politicians who are just trying to buy votes. So I wanted to bring up all those points, get your feedback on them. But I do think that, again, if we were somehow able to solve the problem of the government or the Fed being able to print currency or create currency units out of thin air, that would solve a lot of these problems we're talking about.
So clearly, the central banking concept itself has been the reason for the removal of the American household or the households globally. And so once the whole Great Society program was really kicked off, is when we actually started seeing the demand or need for two income households primarily. Therefore, the young lady got out and worked, and then the whole idea of not having enough became a problem, because in order to live the American dream, someone has to fund it. Therefore, I think two people were required to get out, and so here we are today now, where more than two people need to actually get out, and wages still aren't really improved. And so, removing the central banking concept would be the solution to our biggest problem. True. Question is, how? Because I don't see the politicians who actually get paid from them doing anything about it.
No, because if we have a currency reset, let's say we went through a Venezuela type of hyperinflation, or even in Argentina, the population would most likely, hopefully, would say, listen, we are, especially if the U.S. or the U.S. dollar being the world reserve currency, I mean, you could have a situation where the entire world gets burned by holding dollars, and the world says, okay, we are done with this fiat money system. We don't want anything to do with it anymore. It's destroyed the world. It's destroyed Japan. It's destroyed the Eurozone. It's destroyed the United States. We see the problems, and we need something. We need our money fixed, or our currency, excuse me. We need our currency fixed to something that the governments can't create out of thin air. And now, I want to state that although I think there's a good probability that we get to that point sometime in the future, then it's a cycle, right? And then I think you have that system in place for, call it 20, 30 years, and all of a sudden people get lackadaisical again. They forget the past. We have recency bias. And then you have these politicians come back in and say, oh, well, this crazy Bitcoin standard that we're on, we can't have all these government programs, and we can't go to war, and it's limiting it's affecting our national security and all of these things. And then sure enough, 30, 40, 50 years later, whatever it is, then we're right back into this fiat system. But I think at least for those 20 or 30 years, we would have a system in place that is more aligned with, I think, what all of us would like to see. And if that plays out that way, my point is that I don't think the government would have any say in the matter.
Now, look at this chart on the screen now. This is the evolution of our currency. And so you see, everything was incremental. It was a generation in between, technically, until this point now, to where the only thing that will be presented as a solution is digital, because they will hyperinflate away paper to where people will not want to hold it, especially when they go to negative. Negative interest rates is a threat to them with people holding cash. So digital is the only way to go. So the problem with that is it's going to come from a centralized source, ultimately, I believe.
What George just said is why this chart here originates at 1850. If you look at, I think it's 1805 until 1845, the amount of growth in America in those years when there was not a centralized bank, it was unbelievable, because we had our currency, but yet it was actually tied to silver, and it
was metal, flat out.
Exactly. And that's why they never talk about like 1805 to like 1840, when Andrew Jackson went after the friggin' banks. And that's why Trump has Andrew Jackson in his office, that's the one picture of the one president that he has in his office is Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was known for one thing in Washington: taking down the National Bank.
Andrew Jackson. During Andrew Jackson's time, he did take on the second U.S. bank run by Nicholas Biddle. Nicholas Biddle thought Jackson was on his political heels, so he came in for. Then they were on 20 years, and they came in for a recharter, and Andrew Jackson fought against it. They didn't get the recharter. Andrew Jackson referred to the second U.S. bank as a hydra-headed monster eating the flesh of the common man. Yep. Andrew Jackson had, I'll put it mildly, had a colorful history, especially the Trail of Tears. But what he did accomplish was that during his tenure as president, the national debt actually got paid down to zero. Now, if you look at the U.S. Treasury records year to year, I think the lowest was during his time period at $34,000. But that was year to year. He actually got it down to zero. He was able to do that because he sold land out west. The point is, he really did not like debt. And what we haven't seen in the more recent time periods is a president that is okay with debt. If you look at, and I've studied the national debt a little bit, if you look at the first day of Clinton to the last day of Obama, the national debt in round numbers grew $15.5 trillion, which meant on the first day of Trump, 78% of the national debt had been acquired in the prior 24 years, 9.3 under Obama. Now, does that sound sustainable?
No.
We'll add in Trump. Let's not forget about Trump.
Oh, I'm not.
I'm about the end of Obama. Trump's put on just as much as Obama, and we haven't been in a recession.
And
I'm not saying it hasn't. The thing is, we're now at 23 trillion.
Yeah.
Okay, the system is not functioning properly. We need to talk about why the system is not functioning properly. George and I do disagree with the term or the use of the term money. And because for me, as much as I respect George, and I do, the money is never, ever printed into existence. Yes, our Federal Reserve notes are printed, but at the moment they're printed, it's not money. It's to the Bureau of Engraving and Printing who prints it, it's a print job. To the Fed who gets it, it's a printing expense. To the bank who next gets it, it's a reserve in physical form. Only in the hands of people in our businesses does it become part of the M1 money supply. And the only reason it becomes part of the M1 money supply is because an electronic digit went away. We really need to understand that the real power in our monetary system is not the Fed. The Fed's influential, no doubt, but it doesn't have its hands on the reins. It's not the U.S. government. It's not the U.S. Treasury. The only entities that create money in our system today are banks. Banks are the sole creators of M1 money in our system. This is the power that needs to be taken back from banks, returned to the benefit and control of the people, and then we can deal with the three evils that are in our system today that are accepted as normal, everyday, okay. There's nothing to talk about. Inflation, the need for federal income taxation, and national debt. If we don't deal with money creation the way it really happens in this system, we're not going to deal with these three, and these three are going to take us down.
Now watch this. I got a solution. Let me know if you guys agree. We can start this campaign. Everybody go to your banking system and withdraw everything that you think you have there. Let's speed this party up. How about that?
No, I don't want it. It's like, the thing is you create these runs, it's not going to happen. What I would advocate for is education and activation. We need to get people to understand this. And there's two questions. I learned this from a friend the hard way, because he told me this. And I was really offended when he told it to me, and then I realized he gave me the two me the two most important questions that I have to answer.
Yeah.
And they are, what's in it for me? Why should I care?
Yeah.
When we can explain to people what's in it for them and why they would care, we can get enough people, maybe 10%, to go active, to tell the elected employees in DC what to do, get this done or don't come home. We're not going to want you here anymore, and we're going to get the system changed.
So we need a campaign
now
that incentivizes people in those two categories. What's in it for them? The problem is majority of people don't have anything anyway, so they don't really have anything to lose anyway. So
no, they do have.
What?
To your point, yes, they do. Okay, there's people who don't have very much, and it's very unfortunate. And if they had a $500, car expense, they couldn't get it done. I get that. The thing is, there's things that we have every day that we take for granted. Roads, electricity, food, whatever. Okay. So we all got skin in this game. Wouldn't you like to work towards a system that will actually bring you a better, more stable, more secure life? I would.
Only you can do that.
And that's what I'm doing.
We all talk about government. Mm-hmm. The amount the government really has authority over us is nil to almost not even existent. It's all right. Why are we all not poor? Us four. Why are we all? No. Why are we all not homeless? All right. Why aren't we?
We're productive contributors to society.
Right. We took personal responsibility a long time ago in our lives, or maybe recent, and you don't automatically wake up homeless. It's people need to take personal responsibility, and that's not popular. We will never convince. There is probably 50% of this country that couldn't give a crap what we're talking about, and there's another 20% that couldn't give two craps. So we and people watching this YouTube right now, we sit and chant that we need to educate and we need to do this and we need to rally the people. Most of the people, if they've got a cheeseburger in their mouth and their wife's not bitching at them, it's a good day, and they don't care about the moral or the freedom or recently, unfortunately, over the last 100 years, the religious connections. They're losing the idea of why we're here on this planet. They're just here surviving, not understanding that God actually put us here to thrive
and to contribute. That's
I want to touch on, just to be very clear for the record. My definition of currency is just really a medium of exchange. Money is something that's a store of value and also a medium of exchange. But I don't think that that's what gives people purchasing power. And I think that we've, as a society, we've brainwashed ourselves into believing that currency units equal consumption. And nothing could be further from the truth. The only thing that equals consumption is productivity and what you produce. And then money is just a store of your excess productivity. And so I want to say that first and foremost. And then also with the Federal Reserve, I completely agree with Alan in the sense that the money supply that's in the economy is 100% loaned into existence by private banks. That is for sure. The only thing that the Fed has control over is the amount of reserves that they have, that those banks hold with the Fed. And that's very limited in their use, but it does allow in in a system. I don't want to say fractional reserve because it's really not a fraction. It's not an old school. When people think of the word or the term fractional reserve, that's not really the way the banking system works, the modern banking system at all. But we do have reserve requirements in the United States, and therefore the more reserves technically, the more that those banks would be able to lend if there was demand for those loans. And that, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but there are several areas, such as the UK, where they do not have reserve requirements. So banks can literally create as much money as they want to with no restrictions whatsoever. But I think that that Alan and I think we pretty much see eye to eye on that.
All right, so real quick, I want to touch on this. Hold on, Alan, one quick. So we got a super chat that says the individual is the only method for cultural changes, referring to what we're talking about.
Sure.
Says, does anyone believe the Fed has been observing crypto for decades? And my response would be they haven't been observing crypto, but they've been observing and wanting to have digital currency. And so crypto is just a form of cryptography, which happens to be rebranded and then utilized as a blockchain medium. And then you attach the word currency because of how the blockchains operate. They have things that you can spin off of them in the form of a currency, but yet not cryptocurrency exactly, but digital currencies. Yes. Anybody want to chime in on that one as well?
Yeah. Real quick.
Yes.
I got to go to a radio program in about 6 minutes,
right,
so I didn't want to just exit and not say. As always, gentlemen, thank you so much for this opportunity. This has been a blast. I'll leave the crypto world to Silver Ben and George. But again, this has been a great hour chat for about an hour and a half.
Yes,
and as always, I look forward to next time. But yeah, I got to switch systems and go to radio. But everybody, until next time, be and stay safe and well. Thank you.
All right, Alan.
Appreciate you. All right, so we touched on his last thought, and anybody share your thoughts on that last one, and then we will dial back and be officially done. So, crypto.
Yep. I think that cryptocurrencies, we have a choice to choose our currency for the first time in history. Now, those currencies may run on several different networks and may atomically swap between the actual networks, but we're reaching a point where the average Joe who doesn't care will work with the government suggested structure.
Yeah.
And I think that people like us who actually care will find and use cryptocurrencies that actually fit our needs, and others who have other opinions will use other currencies.
Yeah.
But at this point, for the first time historically, we all are going to be able to interact with like-minded individuals on a global scale and create almost economies based on political and religious and individual global communities. Like there will be a website you shop at because you agree with them politically, or there's an Amazon type platform that's ran by a Christian nonprofit, and that will be available, and they'll use currencies of all different kinds.
Yeah. And another side note, George, if you have a thought, feel free to do it. And so one thing I'm going to do another video soon in relation to continuing to challenge the narrative of cryptocurrency as well as even metals, because most people are waiting on Bitcoin to reach 1 million or reach the next high for them to say, okay, now they're going to base their financial future upon a number. And the moment as you're waiting for Bitcoin or whatever to take off because of the chaos around you, if you're waiting to that point to start living and enjoying and becoming the best version of you, you are already too late. And then on top of that, never put your faith or confidence in anything created by man or something that was given to us to enjoy, such as metal. So whether it be gold or silver, Bitcoin or Litecoin, if you put your hope and confidence in them, you are already, so yeah, you're going to be, disappointed because both of them are meant to be used, not worshiped or idolized or whatever people seem to be doing with this stuff. So enjoy your life best can, be productive. If you're productive as you can be, you're going to always be needed and wanted and be rewarded for your work. So just my little 2 cents.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and piss off everyone in the entire live stream right now. but I'm joking. But I think that's very important what Mike said, and I'm a firm believer in holding precious metals, especially gold, as an insurance policy. Potentially, Bitcoin is a fantastic speculation, but I think that, and I don't think this is really people's fault. Again, it goes back to what we were saying before about inflation and fiat currency and all this. But I think that so many people today are betting their future on some sort of asset that they have going up in value, whether that's Bitcoin, whether that's gold, whether that's shares of Tesla. Whatever it is, that's how they're going to increase their purchasing power or consumption on a moving forward basis. That's their only hope. Mm-hmm. And although I think it's prudent to invest your portfolio in a way that's most likely going to grow over time, I think it's a complete mistake. And this is exactly what you're saying, Mike, that people take their financial future or their freedom, because that's all, Listen, I've been dirt poor and I've had a lot of money. And the big difference between those two is when you have a lot of money, you've got a lot more freedom. It doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't make you more happy, but it buys you a hell of a lot more freedom. Mm-hmm. So when people are taking their future, their freedom, their financial freedom, and their personal satisfaction, and they're placing that in the control of a piece of metal, or a digital currency, or a house, your home equity, or shares of Uber, Tesla, that's not the right way to do it. It has to go back to the individual, and you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what can I produce? What am I producing right now? And the only way that I can guarantee in the future I'm going to have more purchasing power, therefore more freedom than I have right now, is if I learn to produce more than I am consuming moving forward, and more than I'm producing right now.
Yeah.
In other words, get your ass a job.
or my thing is, get a calling worth living for.
Yes.
So I've got another video coming about retirement. I'm about to really challenge the retirement concept because I don't believe in it personally. I believe if you are part of something that you can work towards your entire life, you won't want to stop working. If you're playing for work and getting compensated for it, why would you ever want to stop? That's what I don't understand. But we bought into that conditioned model of give your best years up front, and then you'll get to enjoy the remainder part. In this decade, people are going to be disappointed. And so I'm trying to wake people up, say, hey, I might want to rethink retirement. So I'm starting a new channel, Rethinking Retirement.
Man, you're going to be busy, Mike. You're going to be busy.
I'm just playing, man. But all right, gentlemen, it's been an hour 30. It's the longest we've ever gone, but I've enjoyed it as always. We got George Gammon on YouTube. We got Bitcoin Ben on YouTube and Twitter and everywhere else. If you are new, go subscribe to those guys and be a blessing to them. And everyone does a great job of educating and just trying to do the best they can to wake people up. So, yeah, that's it, man. I'm winded. I'm long-winded.
Awesome. Everyone have a great day and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
All right, be good, babe. See you later. Whew. That was a lot of